All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into the nitty-gritty of a tool, a really important one, in SAP Material Management. We call it MM, and that's MR Managed Supplier Invoices. You sent over some really interesting stuff about this, and it seems like it's kind of a linchpin for making sure all the finances are right and the supplier relationships are running smoothly. Absolutely. It's really at the core of how you check invoices in SAP MM, and all the material you sent over it gave us a great overview from just the basic idea of MIRO to how it handles extra costs, how to fix mistakes, and even returns, how it all fits into the bigger picture of buying things. Yeah. So for you, the listener, this is your crash course in MIRO, why it's so important for not messing up payments and making sure everything lines up when you're procuring things. So let's start with the basics. What does MIRO do?
Well, in simple terms, MIRO is the transaction in SAP MM where you verify the invoices you get from your suppliers. It's really where the money side of things meets the actual process of ordering and receiving goods. So its main job is to compare those invoices against the purchase orders, those official documents you sent to suppliers, and the goods receipts, which are the confirmation that you actually got what you ordered.
So it's like a detective making sure everything matches up.
Exactly. It makes sure that the bill from the supplier is what you were expecting to pay and matches what you actually received. So say, for example, if you ordered, 100 pieces of something, MRO is where you double check that the invoice is also for 100 pieces and, obviously the price, all of that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So why is this matching so important?
Well, this control prevents billing errors, making sure that you pay the right price for the right quantity. It also automatically updates the purchase order history, so you have this complete record of the transaction. And all this information then flows into your financial system for accurate accounting. In the end, it really helps to avoid disputes with suppliers and just makes your payment process a lot smoother.
I see. So it's not just about catching mistakes, it's also about really good record keeping. So let's talk about, those extra costs that sometimes pop up, like shipping.
Yeah.
How does RAO handle that?
So a MIRO can handle both planned and unplanned indirect acquisition costs, like transport fees, for instance.
Right.
So, you might receive a separate invoice for, shipping costs related to a particular order. MRO allows you to correctly enter and allocate these costs to that order.
So it can deal with, those added charges. But what happens if the invoice doesn't actually match the order or what you received?
Well, that's where SAP's automated checks come in. The system can identify these discrepancies, based on certain tolerance levels that you can set. So, for example, if an invoice exceeds those limits, say you ordered 100 pieces, but the invoice is for 90 pieces, the invoice could be automatically blocked for payment.
Blocked. So what happens then?
Well, blocked invoices need to be reviewed and released. This can be done manually. The system will flag it, and someone will need to investigate before any payment is made. But these tolerance levels are actually customizable. So, you can sort of automate the process for small differences, but still catch any, really big errors.
So like a safeguard. Okay, so what if something needs to be fixed after an invoice has already been processed? Like, can you do that?
Oh, absolutely. MIRO can handle that as well. You can create credit memos, for instance, for returned items. And if an invoice is completely wrong, you can even cancel the entire document. And all of this is done, while still maintaining that crucial audit trail.
It sounds like MIRO is really, central to this whole purchasing process. Where exactly does it fit in?
You're exactly right. It is. So invoice verification using MIRO happens after the goods have been received, but before you pay the supplier. So the usual flow is, you request something, you create a purchase order for it, you receive it, you verify the invoice in MIRO, and then the payment is made. So it's really this critical control point between the logistics of getting those goods and the financial side of paying for them.
Makes sense. Now, are there any other SAP tools that sort of work with Arrow in this process?
Yeah, there are definitely some related transactions. MIR4, for instance, gives you a list of all the supplier invoices. MRDC is for automatically settling those extra acquisition costs. And then there's MR11, which helps reconcile those goods invoice received accounts, what we call the GRI or clearing accounts, which, those accounts, they temporarily hold the value of goods that you've received but haven't been invoiced for yet. And that makes sure everything balances out.
Okay, so it's all part of a bigger system. So if we had to, boil it down, what's the one key thing to remember about MR?
Well, the big takeaway is that MIRO is more than just, entering data from an invoice. It's a central control point in SAP MM that makes sure everything is accurate and transparent and efficient throughout your entire, procurement process. So by carefully comparing these invoices with your original purchase orders and the goods you've actually received, you gain a lot more control over costs and you build much stronger relationships with your suppliers.
That's a really good overview. Really helps understand why MFARO is so important. And something to think about with all this in mind, are there any other areas in, the typical procurement workflow that might still have weaknesses or room for improvement?
Hmm.
Maybe even with a system like SAP in place. Could be interesting to look at the accuracy of the order data when it's first entered, or even just how different departments talk to each other during the process.
Hmm.
But hey, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.